North Western Chronicles, Episode 37, Rusty's Magic Ways. One summer day, Dennis was working at the docks. He was looking for the last car in Molly's train. "What's wrong, Dennis? Having some trouble?" "I've been looking for the brake van on Molly's train. It was right here, but now it's gone." "I'm sure someone else picked it up by mistake. Engines usually come through here to pick up trucks once in a while." But Dennis was still confused. "But I put the brake van in the siding over there." As Dennis continued looking for his brake van, Rusty appeared with tankers of fuel and tar. "Hello, Salty," he greeted cheerfully. "Where do you want these tankers?" "Hello, Rusty. Fancy seeing you down here. You can just leave them right over there." But Dennis was still growing frustrated. "I don't get it. I put it right over there." Just then, Salty looked over to a siding near Rusty. "Look over there, Dennis. I think we've found your brake van." Dennis was puzzled. "How did it end up there?" "I just noticed it after Rusty arrived here." Salty looked at the brake van as Dennis coupled it and brought it to Molly's train. "Thanks, Salty. And you too, Rusty. Who knows? Maybe Rusty has magical powers." And with that, Molly left with her train. Dennis's brow furrowed as Salty chuckled. "Well, Rusty, is it true? Do you have magical powers?" "Guilty as charged," he said jokingly. "Well, anyways, everyone, I have to leave. Goodbye." After Rusty left the docks, Dennis remained quite curious. Later that day, Dennis met up with Oliver at the yard. He told the Great Western Engine of the story, and he was most enthused. "Magical powers, you say?" said Oliver. "You hear that, Toad?" "Indeed I do, Mr. Oliver. We ought to tell Mr. Duck and his friends at the sheds." "That's not a bad idea, Toad." "You mean you actually believe me?" said Dennis. "Sure," said Oliver. "Weirder things have happened on Sodor. If anything, if Rusty does have magical powers, he seems to be using them for good, rather than evil." Oliver chuckled. "We're going to pass by the sheds today. We'll be sure to tell everyone there." When Oliver told the engines of Timmis Sheds the news, they too were very amused. "Wow," said Thomas. "Real magical powers." "It certainly sounds intriguing," agreed Duck. "Are you actually telling me you believe this boiler sludge?" asked Gordon arrogantly. "Well, you don't know for sure if you haven't seen it." "Well, if your primary source is Dennis the Diesel, then I'll believe it when I see it." "I agree with Gordon," said Henry. "The day Rusty gains magical powers is the day the Fat Controller maintains a diet plan." The other engines laughed. "James and I are working at the quarry tomorrow. If we see anything, we'll tell you." The next day, James and Duck arrived early in the morning at the construction site. "Do you really think Rusty possesses magical powers?" "No," replied Duck admittedly, "but we might as well have some fun while we're working here." As the engines continued talking, a confused workman approached the two. Excuse me," said the workman, "but have you seen a crate from the Sodor Shipping Company? It has some tools we need to work on the site." "Sorry, but no." Suddenly Rusty passed by and cruised through the construction site. After Rusty passed, the workman was stunned. "Oh, there it is. I thought I already looked over there. Hey, boss, I found the crate." "I can't believe it." James and Duck were bewildered. "Well, that's all I need to see," remarked Duck, and the two continued with their work. Meanwhile, at Marin Station, Gordon sat with his express as he impatiently awaited Bertie the bus, who hadn't yet shown up. "This is the latest Bertie has ever been. If he doesn't arrive soon, these passengers won't get back home in time. I don't know why Sir Topham Hatt relies on him." As Gordon waited, Rusty rolled on the viaduct above. "Oh, there's Rusty. I'm sure he knows where that bus is." "Sorry I'm running late, Gordon," panted Bertie. But where did you come from?" "What do you mean? A little spooked, Gordon?" "No." But even though he wouldn't admit it, Gordon was. Later that day at the Sodor airfield, Sir Topham Hatt was growing worried. He wanted to take the railway inspector on a helicopter ride to survey the railway, but Harold was nowhere to be seen. "Sorry, Chris, but I guess we won't be surveying the railway today. Oh, look, and you even brought your camera along with you." "No worries, Stephen. We could always do it another day." It's just so strange. Harold is almost always on time. As the Fat Controller grew worried, Rusty the Diesel sped by. Who's that engine? Oh, that's Rusty. He actually belongs to the Skarloey Railway, but we have specialized hybrid tracks put in place so we can run. Wait, I think I see Harold, cried the railway inspector. Harold descended as the Fat Controller held on to his hat. Apologies for the delay, sir. No worries, Harold, replied the Fat Controller. Please, Chris, after you. The two boarded Harold as Lorry watched from behind the airfield. By the time night came, almost every engine on Sodor had heard of Rusty's magic ways. And then Harold landed just after Rusty left, concluded Edward. Really? If only Rusty came around every time my trucks were acting up. I wonder if Sir Topham Hatt knows. We should have Rusty come by more often. But Henry still wasn't convinced. Pah, I think I've heard enough about this magic mumbo-jumbo nonsense. Why so doubtful, Henry? Don't you want to believe in the magic? Thomas said half-jokingly. Have any of you considered that this all may be one big coincidence, or a pattern of strange events? I would be inclined to believe you, Henry, began Gordon, but these patterns keep popping up all over Sodor, even when no other engine is there. Well, you can tell me as many tales as you want, but I would much rather continue my work in peace. It's not like Rusty's magical powers have done any good for me, he muttered. Well, if Rusty decides to use magic for bad rather than good, don't come complaining to me. The other engines laughed as Henry sat quietly. The following day, Henry was asked to pull the express for a round trip starting at the big station. He was very excited. About time, he said to himself. As the passengers began to board the train, Henry noticed Rusty pass by, but decided not to say anything. Don't forget, said Stanley, the coupling for the coaches was just repaired, so you can go faster than usual. Thanks, Stanley. I pulled the express a few times before, so no need to worry. The last passenger boarded the train, but Henry was eager to get a head start and bolted out of the station. As Henry went from station to station, he couldn't have been happier. With no sign of Rusty, he assumed his magic ways had worn off. Henry proudly puffed back into Knapford Station with the express, until he saw Sir Topham Hatt's face. The Fat Controller seemed rather suspicious. Henry, why do you only have one express coach? One coach? Henry looked back in horror. Where's the other coach? I had it when I left. Well, I would certainly like to know. Just then, Rusty appeared by Dennis with a second express coach. I think you've left this. I found it by the construction site, he said. Henry was dumbfounded. Oh, thank you, Rusty. Well, Henry, I suppose you owe some passengers an apology, and I owe them some refunds. Excuse me. The Fat Controller walked into his office as a grin appeared on Dennis's face. Well, he began, I suppose Rusty has magic ways after all. Henry gave a tired look to the little diesel, who gave a wink in reply.